You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. We have with us today the fabulous Hannah Ashwell, and I hope you guys are going to love her as much as I do. She has such a spunky, fun personality, and honestly, somebody from the States hearing somebody from London, I also think she has an adorable uh, accent. So we're gonna have fun with all of that today. But I really wanted Hannah on the show because as she and I were chatting, her understanding of trauma healing and bringing boundaries to that was so well done and so good that I was like, yes, we've got to talk about this stuff because it's like I've said, like one of the biggest groups of people that I've ever seen that have dealt with serious trauma is the entrepreneur community, especially the female entrepreneur community. And this is one of the reasons why they're consistently asking about boundaries. And so, welcome, Hannah. I want you to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Hi, Erin. It's amazing to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity. So I'm Hannah and I'm from the UK. And at the moment, I'm doing a PhD in trauma psychology, which I absolutely love. I also work as a therapist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a mum. And previously, I've allowed myself to get so overloaded. I've had quite significant periods of burnout. So I really love the fact that I can come here and we can have a really good chat about boundaries because they weren't easy for me, having been a
Yeah.
yes person for all my life and also being consumed with guilt for saying no and then ending up doing stuff and feeling resentful about it. So I think it's something that in order to protect ourselves, it's really important that we address the kind of things we need to do to keep ourselves healthy and well.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I love what you were just saying there. I've been a yes person and struggled with boundaries. And so like one of the things
Mm,
that talk about all the time on this show, in my coaching, in general is like how our self-identity really comes down to how we set up our boundaries. And if we believe we have to say yes to everything for safety, because that's why we do it, right? It's
yeah.
it's it's that trauma response. If we're consistently saying yes to everything and saying no to ourselves, we definitely have an issue with boundaries because we're not seeing ourselves well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that I've learned to say yes to the really meaningful things.
Yes.
Um, and that has been a way to protect myself, although I wasn't looking at it like that before. I looked at it very much of, I need to say yes to everything because that's the expectation. And I also think as women, we have this sometimes unrealistic expectation that we have to do everything all of the time and be brilliant at everything all of the time without thinking of the impact that that has on us. And it can be quite a
Yeah.
significant impact. And for me, I was doing lots of stuff. I was raising children, running a household, running my own business, studying, and doing lots and lots of stuff for the church. And just waking up in the morning thinking, oh, I can't believe I've got to do that today. And actually, my heart wasn't in it. And that isn't a servant heart at all. And that was the point where I really started to think, I'm not doing it because I really feel a passion to doing it. I feel I'm doing it because I have to, and that's completely wrong. But also to balance it out, we know that being idle is not a good thing. But
Yes, I
the flip side of that is that we've become, as a society, we glorify being busy. When somebody says to you, "What have you been doing?" you give them a big list of things that you've done. And actually, there's nothing wrong with saying, "Well, I was really tired, so I had a nap, and then I watched 911 emergency on the TV and ate half a packet of biscuits." But it's finding a balance between being idle but not allowing being busy to become an idol. Do you
yeah,
see what
yeah,
I mean?
no,
An
no, no.
idol and
Yeah,
an
yeah.
idol. And we can, as particularly when we're running businesses as entrepreneurs as well, that for me, I had to be really, really aware of the fact that I was working 15 hours a day on building my business. And actually that, yes, I'm at home. Yes, I'm here for the children, although I'm not present all of the time if I've got my head in a laptop. But it crept up on me really carefully. So I was saying no to the external stuff, but then became so focused on I'm writing a book as well. So became so focused on that actually I ended up doing more, even though I was sitting at home at the kitchen table, than I was when I was going out and serving other people. So again, I had to rein myself back in and say, look, I need to be constantly aware, because this is something that will creep back into my life if I let it.
Oh, yes. So, one of the things I love talking about here, because like I said, we talk about like Christianity and Christian things in this podcast as well, because I'm a lover of God. I love God with all my heart and soul. And I think we also need to be aware of the adversary and his demands and his plots and the way that he is
Mm.
working. And you put something there so beautifully that really is like understanding the mind of your enemy. When we get over busy, we burn out, and what do? We fall way into the idleness, right?
Yeah.
Because like, what's the point? What is the point? And I know for a fact I've asked that question, right? In my business, in being a mom, in everything I've done before, right? I've asked that, like, what's the point? And I know, like, when I've asked
Mm.
that question, that lands me right into not getting out of bed, just scrolling through YouTube all day long, like ignoring everything that I do technically need to do to keep my business going or my kids going or
Mm.
things like that, right? I have been there, but it's also interesting that I know that this message about boundaries and trauma healing and creating money and being able to create that dream life, that's what God wants. This is a massive message. It's interesting that that's what the adversary wants to stop. So, how does he
Yeah.
do that? By getting us to be idle or to see something else as our God.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You're definitely right. And then, there's also that other impact of continually feeling guilty, guilty that we're not doing that and we're doing this. And, sometimes I have to decide, between am I going to do this and am I going to do that? And in which case that's not going to get done until tomorrow. And constantly feeling like I'm on a hamster wheel. And that's really not healthy either. So,
No,
I think setting boundaries isn't selfish
no,
and protecting ourselves isn't selfish. But I think for a lot of women, we
we think it
have
is.
been brought up to believe that we have to do everything, we have to be good at everything, and we can't be seen to be putting ourselves first. To me, was sold to me as being quite a selfish act. And
Hmm.
actually, if I'm not functioning at my best, I can't serve other people at my best in my relationships, in my family, in my business, and the people that, my clients. um, I can't serve them to my absolute best, which does them a disservice if they're paying me. So, in order to do my best, I have to look after myself.
Okay, listeners, here's what's amazing. Okay. Hannah was just talking about mom guilt. And I don't know if it's going to be in the podcast or not, but I just had because on the other side of my door, my office door, is my front room. I've got my little kids all home because it's summer vacation. And what does my adorable little daughter do? Mom! Through the door. And we're talking about the mom guilt. I've got a podcast guest who I absolutely adore. And it's such a real thing that we deal with, isn't it, Hannah? Like it's hilarious because we feel like we can't balance. And I know for me, like it's not so much a thing anymore, but when I first started coaching and doing my podcast and I'm writing a book and I'm doing all of the things, right? Feeling like there wasn't a place for my kids in my business and my business didn't
Mm.
have a place in my kids' life. And the truth of the matter is, it's all my life. My business is constantly weaving in and out of my life, right? Um, I'm constantly talking to people about boundaries and healing trauma just because that is the mission God gave me. And guess what people talk to me about at the park while I'm sitting here with my kids, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with my kids. Like they're constantly a piece of my business, right? There's a lot of times I'm on a call with a client, or sometimes even, like I said, with the podcast interview, where I'm like, I want this to be great audio, and there's still that in the middle of it, right? Here's the thing. I think that both motherhood and entrepreneurship can be messy. It can be so messy, as we have just seen, and just paused the podcast and edited it all in this area for this very thing that you were just talking about, right? It's amazing that you're talking about this, mom
Yeah.
guilt thing, and then the mom guilt like
And
totally slaps us, right? It's
yeah, and I
it's such a
think that
thing.
yeah, and when I really started to think about having boundaries in my life because I've always been really intentional with my children
Yes.
right from the start. This is what we do, and this is why we do it. And this is what we don't do, and this is the reason why we don't do it. Whether that's, the way that we think, or the way that we behave, or the way that we treat other people. Um, and I've been really, from the start, very intentional about that. While my personal and professional life was just flapping around all over the place. So it actually, what it has enabled us to do is to have more structure in our home because my work is in my home. I don't
Yeah.
go out to an office. So, my children now are old enough to understand that, they wouldn't come in unless there was an emergency. They won't just come in and ask for a snack or anything like that. But, what it's done is it's created a really good structure in our home. And I think that helps all of us because
Mm.
they know what to expect of me and when, and I know what to expect of them. And having that, and it does sound quite rigid, but having that in place has been really cohesive actually for all of us.
You know what?
And that, yeah, that's really, that is really good.
Yeah, no, 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 no. Let me say that I've seen the same thing. Absolutely seen the same thing in my own home, and like I do still have littles at home, right? That still are
Mm,
learning the whole don't yell at mom through the door while she's
yeah.
on a podcast, right? Like they're still learning this concept. But I'll tell you what I've noticed, and without going into a ton of detail, but I
Mm,
might get a little emotional here. My family about 4 years ago went through one of the hardest traumas that I've ever been
mm,
through. And now I'm telling you, I have been through some serious crap in my life, right? This was by far the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And those boundaries, even though it was the hardest thing I've ever been through, because I had the boundaries, it kept them safe. Even
yeah.
though it was a massive violation, not just to myself, but to everyone in my family. Massive
Mm,
violation, right? You see things like what happened, and the way that it affects the kids in the home. And you see kids like shutting down, they stop talking, they're not willing
Yeah.
to speak up, you know, and then they literally hide into themselves because that's what kids know.
Yeah.
My kids aren't doing that, right? They're instead yelling at me through the door on a podcast, which, you can look at that and be like, ah, dang it. Or you can be like, actually, I'm really grateful that my kids are testing boundaries still to see where they're safe.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? And this is the thing. This is the beauty of the structure. It's not rigid.
Mm.
It's
No.
safety. Because the
Yeah.
thing is you think about it, like when we want safety, we want something that has a little bit of flexibility to it to catch
Yeah.
us without injuring us, but also has the rigidity to hold its shape. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, to me, setting boundaries is part of stewardship,
Yes.
for ourselves and for our families and our businesses and the people that we support in our businesses, our customers and clients and things. So actually for me, it's very much been about changing my way of thinking rather than thinking, oh, having boundaries is really strict. I grew up in a very, very oppressive, strict household, and I've done everything I can to kind of break that generational
Yeah, same
pattern.
here.
So when I first started thinking about boundaries, I thought, well, I grew up suffocated by rules and rigidity and fear, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be different. So for me, it's been a really big learning curve about it's not about being really strict and everybody living in fear. It's about stewarding my family and saying this is what we do now, and as we grow things will change.
Yes. Yeah, because boundaries actually do change.
Yeah.
And the reason why they change is because we change,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I've said this so many times, boundaries are the result of the way you love,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely, 100% the way you love. And especially in the way that you love yourself, right? That's what a boundary is. It's a result of how we love ourselves. It's the result of how we love others and how we love them well. And so, like, I have someone in my life that I love dearly, deeply, right? But this person is also not someone who is happy. And
Mm.
the only way they can have any type of happiness, quote unquote, is if you are unhappy along with them and you're consistently
Right.
complaining and not feeling good about yourself and et cetera, et cetera. And if
Mm.
you refuse to do that, well, they want to attack you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I could get angry, right? And be like, well, you don't have any place in my life anymore, right? Or I could lovingly let them go. The result is the same distance, right? But one leads to guilt, one leads to, I know I'm doing the right thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's the thing, like what is attached to that result? And that's the thing that I think we want to ask ourselves when it comes to understanding boundaries and how they play out in our life and our business and with our families and stuff. Is boundaries, a true boundary is built out of love and truth,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And it's
And
not about
yeah,
making somebody else feel bad or feel
yes.
guilty.
And you know what? And even if they do feel bad and even if they do feel guilty, when you are acting out of love and you're doing the best thing for everyone. Because here's the thing, like somebody can be like, I want you in my life, but then they treat you like you're the worst person ever, or like
Yeah.
in this case, they said I was a liar, right? When I
Mm.
wasn't lying, and they demanded evidence into my bank account and wanted me to take my bank account and show it to all the world because they thought
Right.
I was a liar. And it's like, yeah. Anyway, it was like one of those, okay, well, you know what you're really saying? is not what you're saying with your
Mm.
words. It's what you're saying with your energy and your actions towards me. And what I was hearing was they needed space, right? So who am I to try to keep them in my life?
Yeah.
And so we created space. I created space. They're not happy about it. They're mad,
Mm.
right? They keep trying to get at me through other channels. They're still angry, they're still mad, etc. But you know what? I didn't do this because I'm angry.
Yeah.
And so there's no guilt in that space. I did it because I know it's the best thing for them and I know it's the best thing for me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the
And you'll
beauty of
feel
this.
so different once you've made that. It's sometimes it can take a really long time to make that decision, can't it? You put a lot
Mhm.
of thought into it and a lot of energy into it, but then the subsequent peace that you feel once you've made the decision just reiterates that it is the right decision when you're not having that
Yeah.
guilt, but you're feeling peace instead. So that is, again, that's something that I've had to learn. And what it's been able to make me do is it's enabled me to grow rather than holding me back, because
Yes,
certainly when it
exactly.
comes to when it comes to other people, those people, with the way that they were behaving, the way that they were treating me, whether or not it was deliberate or not, was, I think, really holding me back from thriving.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing. And
Mm.
this is why I say, like, it's the highest, like, it's us acting out of the highest form of love for ourselves and another person,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
because that distance, it does give me the ability to thrive, but also
Mm.
gives them the opportunity to. Now, whether they choose that
Yeah.
opportunity or not is up to
Yeah.
them. And I think this is the difference. This is the distinction of the boundary line here. When we're trying
Mm.
to say yes to everything,
Yeah.
we are not giving or not trusting that somebody else can have their own journey,
Yeah. And
right?
a lack of boundaries also is what leads to resentment, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes,
Um, and when we have that kind of feeling in our hearts, that impacts everything.
yes. It absolutely does. It absolutely
Yeah.
does. I
Yeah.
love that. I love this. And so, I love that when we realize that what a boundary really is
Mm.
us understanding ourselves, loving those pieces of ourselves, like all pieces of ourselves, enough to grow ourselves and just being unwilling to allow somebody else with their hooks to come in and tear you to pieces or shred you or tell you you need to do something their way or
Yeah.
that or the demands or et cetera, et cetera. Because when we're set when like before, like you and I both were that yes person, the people pleaser, right? Like when
Yeah.
we're people pleasing, what we're not doing is we're not giving ourselves space to love ourselves, to
Yeah.
love others. What we're doing is we're acting out of a fear of not having safety.
Yeah. And boundaries are, they're in themselves, they're an act of self-respect.
Exactly. And respect for others too. Like
Yeah.
that's the highest
Yeah.
form. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's all about how we put those boundaries in place and the rationale behind why we're choosing to make the decisions that we're making. So we're not making them out of spite. We're not putting them there out of resentment or to be unkind or rejecting or
Yes.
abandoning other people. Because it also, looking back at kind of my very dysfunctional patterns, I felt that I had to behave a certain way because otherwise that would bring on more rejection
Yes.
or it'd bring on more abandonment. And I'd had, years and years of absolute rejection and abandonment. So my rationale behind saying yes to everything and being the one was that if I did everything everybody wanted, then I would be okay. And actually, I wasn't okay. I ended up with massive levels of burnout, and burnout isn't
Yeah.
a possibility that is going to happen if you're overloaded. It's a definite, it will happen.
Yes. Yes. And it's when I think like when burnout happens, it's also your body saying, okay, you know what? I have tried to communicate to you over and over and over
Mm,
again. Now, this is what we're going to do. And so it's actually your body holding a boundary.
Yeah.
Because your
Yeah.
body's
Yeah.
very good at that. It really is very good at holding boundaries, right? And I always
Yeah.
say, I say this too, that, your body is basically the physical representation of God's love for you. It really
Yeah.
is. And it's amazing how your body, my goodness, is there to literally keep you safe. That's what it's there for, right? But we also need to work with our body and learn true principles, right? Because it's like you said, like I I I used to believe that boundaries were bad, that I couldn't
Mm.
have them, that was being disrespectful, um, et cetera, et cetera. And now when I realize it's just me refusing to act out of alignment with myself and with God, and actually it is the highest form of respect I can give myself and someone else,
Yeah.
right? These are all my
Yeah.
values. They're acting out of my values. And those values are good, right? And when we do that, it does avoid burnout. That being
Yeah.
said, I've been teaching boundaries for 12, 13 years almost, right? There still is a moment of time here and there
Yeah.
when burnout comes.
Yeah.
But instead of getting guilty about it, I get curious. And I think this is like
Mm.
like a beautiful transition into the next piece of what we were talking about, right? Is if you are experiencing some sort of emotion or that burnout or that overwhelm or et cetera, this isn't an opportunity to tell you that you're wrong. This is an
Yeah.
opportunity to help you get curious and find out why you're experiencing this. Like, how did you get here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, self-examination is a real part of the healing process, isn't it?
Yeah, it
It's
absolutely
very
is.
easy to it's very easy to blame external factors. I'm burnt out because of my workload. I'm burnt out because of the serving other people. I'm burnt out because I live off takeaways and food deliveries and not taking care of my body. But actually, we are responsible for the decisions that we make, and we have to be held accountable for that.
Right. Yeah. And and I love to look at it this way. Like whenever I'm experiencing burnout now, I always get reflective and say, where am I not honoring a boundary? Right?
Mm.
That really is the case. And I actually just experienced it a little bit, like maybe about a month or two ago, and I realized, oh, I'm violating my time boundary,
Yeah.
right? And not balancing my time well, why am I doing that? Oh,
Mm.
I kind of noticed a little bit of a scarcity mindset behind that, right? It still happens. It still is
Yeah.
something that I deal with, but it's because I'm still growing,
Yeah.
you know? I'm still growing, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. And so I think like one of the first boundaries that I set, and it sounds like you set, and then one of the first boundaries I definitely want my listeners to set when it comes to life and business and kids that are trying to interrupt you every 5 minutes in a podcast. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing that we experience, I think, not just as women, and not just as mothers, but in society, particularly with Instagram, everybody wants to give the impression that this perfect life and everything's fine, and that adds to increasing pressure of the inability for people to say, "I'm really struggling right now."
Mm,
And certainly something that I do when I am struggling is I just pretend I'm fine and I forge ahead and I think, oh, next week, my workload will drop a little bit and I'll be fine, or this is going to change and that's going to change. And I kind of hold on to an external factor being the thing that's going to make the difference. And actually, it's my decisions that are going to make the difference.
exactly. Exactly. And it's hard for us to make those decisions if we don't stop and just
Mm,
really listen to what's happening and what we're feeling, right?
yeah.
Like let's first and foremost be a really good listener to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And really
And
listen
that's
to what we're
something that
saying.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something that we have to learn to do, isn't it? I don't think it's
Yeah.
something that comes naturally, especially when we've got so many other responsibilities. The biggest responsibility I have is my children.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very difficult to hear your inner voice when you're in a soft play for 3 hours because you're trying to do your accounts while the children play.
Yep.
With the noise of the soft play going on in the background. And it is,
Yeah.
I think that we push ourselves so far down the list of, or we have become accustomed to pushing ourselves so far down the list
Yeah.
of priorities. It's difficult to relearn that behavior, and we have to be very conscious about being able to retrain ourselves to do that.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So good. So true. Okay. So I want to put this in here because this is also something that, I hear a lot, and I know like my answer, but I want to hear yours too. I've I have a lot of people that say, well, self-love, right? Like
Mm,
that's what narcissists do. And I'm like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, that's not self-love. But I would love to hear your thoughts about this too.
um so again, we've very much been fed this idea that if you put yourself first, you think of yourself above anybody else, your opinions matter more than everybody else's, and your feelings matter more than everybody else's, then you must be a narcissist.
Mm,
Now, I also know, working in couples therapy, that the phrase narcissist is very overused. if
yes, it
somebody
is.
has a spouse if somebody has a spouse that they don't like, or has said something to them that they don't like, or behaved in a way that they don't like, they automatically label that person a narcissist, when actually it has quite rigid diagnostic boundaries in terms of what is a narcissist and narcissistic behavior and what isn't. And sadly, self-love has been very much wrapped up in that, hasn't
Yeah,
it? Like
it
you
has.
said. So again, it just feeds into that negativity of, if you put yourself first, then you are a narcissist. And obviously,
Yep.
nobody wants to be thought of or labeled as that. So it's pulling out the good bits and saying, actually, self-love is really important to keep us functioning.
Hmm.
My children need a mum who is available, who's not exhausted. My clients need somebody that's going to turn up and serve them well, especially the amount of money that they're paying me. I have to give them the best service possible. And self-love is the foundation of being able to do all of those things, and it's not about being a narcissist.
It's not at all. And uh, in my experience, Kay, I've been called a narcissist, and I'm like, am I? If if you have that thought, you're not a narcissist. Let me just say that, okay?
Yeah.
Narcissists, in my experience, don't self-reflect, but
No.
someone who self-loves does,
Yeah.
right? Because we want to take massive ownership over our life and over our results, whereas in contrast, someone who is narcissistic wants someone else to take ownership over their life and their results and their actions. Right?
Yeah.
That's the massive difference. That's like the kind of the biggest difference if I'm gonna like put this in a really quick statement, right?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, this is the difference. Self-love leads you to self-reflection because you're constantly thinking about what really is best for you, right? But whereas a narcissist, they're not thinking about what's best for them. They're
No.
thinking about how to run from themselves, run from everyone else, and to stay in their little box and bubble and nobody touch it, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And also, narcissistic perception would be very much about how it makes them look.
Yes, exactly.
Um, so, again, there are these quite subtle differences, but,
Hmm.
like I said, the word narcissist has been very
It
overused.
has.
Um, but, and, sadly, with that, it means that, people who are experiencing living in a narcissistic relationship are less likely to be taken seriously as victims, because it's just become so, the word has become so casualized, and I think there's a real danger in that.
I
But
agree.
yeah, but even just having your own non-negotiables and starting off starting off really small. One of mine was bedtimes. So I've always had I'm a real believer in, sleep and the effect it has on our physical health and our mental health. So my children, I've always had a very, very stable bedtime routine for them. And then for me, I'll stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning doing the ironing because it needs to be done and I haven't done it. And then surviving on 3 hours sleep. So one of the first things I did for myself was say, right, I preach about sleep all the time, and yet I get hardly any myself. So that was one of the first things I did. And then saying to people, like, please don't phone me after 9 o'clock at night unless it's an emergency. Don't phone me for a casual chat at 9:45 at night because I ain't going to answer. Um, and but having been so available for people all of the time, I would then get messages saying, "Are you okay? You're not answering the phone." But it was kind of gently saying to people, "Look, I have to protect my own sleep to enable me to function."
Yes.
So for me, just starting off really small and really gradually rather than waking up one morning and going, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to do that, is just doing it gradually and having the ability to assess how things are going and whether or not, like you said, reflection, whether or not it's working and how is it benefiting you and your family.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that is the key piece. We want to do
Yeah,
that with all of the different types, of boundaries, our listening, our talking, our physical, sexual, energetic, time and money boundaries, right? Like those are the seven
yeah,
different types of boundaries. And when you ask yourself, like, how am I showing up in each one of these different boundaries, it really, really helps us to understand where our values are, how to act out of those values, etc. Kind of like with what you're saying, one of your values is sleep. And it needs to
yeah.
be. And it needs to be. And it's not okay for us to give to someone else when we're not giving to ourselves in the first place. So what would you say to that female entrepreneur? She's got the family and she's got her business and she's trying to bring them both together, balance them, but she's definitely experiencing the burnout. What's the first thing that we want to do?
Prioritize. I find in my business I'm doing lots and lots of little things. And actually, the biggest thing I've done to protect myself is outsourcing. So I have a virtual assistant who does tasks for me, and that has been absolutely brilliant. I just do a list of this needs doing and that needs doing, and then I focus on the things that I can do as a psychologist that she can't. So, I'll be thinking about the content, I'll be thinking about free resources, webinars that I'm going to participate or produce. And she does all the background stuff, and it takes a huge amount of pressure off me. And she can do what would take me 3 hours in about half an hour. And it's the same with my graphic designer. I spent 4 hours on Canva just crying. And then I paid a graphic designer $25, and he did it in half an hour, 30 minutes. So that's, you know, I don't spend money on myself going, people talk about self-care or going to a spa, you know, going out for dinner. I don't do any of that because my self-care is actually being able to outsource the things that I find challenging to somebody that can do them for me. So
Mm,
that for me has been a massive game changer. I don't go to the spa. I can't, I'm not a fan of that sort of thing. So I
I
don't,
am. I
have
love
a
it.
problem. I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
giving, a virtual assistant and a graphic designer, a freelance rate every month because it takes such a huge amount of pressure off of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like,
for me, that it's an investment in my business, but it's also an investment in my mental health.
yes, that is true. That is
Yeah.
true. And somebody who's like, oh my gosh, I've got all these places that I've got to market to, like, and all these
Yeah.
places I've got to be present on. It makes
Yeah.
sense to also hire somebody like a social media marketer, right?
Yeah.
Things like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
like, but let me also say this, that I know that sometimes that we don't feel like we can quote unquote afford that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, pick one, two, maybe three places to be very present and be
Yeah.
present there,
Yeah.
right? And cut back. Don't feel like you have to do all of the things and
Mm.
just be present where you can be present
Yeah.
and expand a little bit by little bit from there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So awesome. Where do people find you, Hannah?
So I'm at www.hannahashwell.co.uk, and there's lots of things on my website to help people. I absolutely love empowering people to make the changes that they need to make to live the lives that they want to lead. So there'll be lots of stuff on my website. So have a look.
Awesome. I love it. And like I said, guys, she's right up my alley. We talk a lot about the same things. So we'll have Hannah back for sure. She's going to be a repeat guest. I've loved this chat with her today. Hopefully, you guys have loved it too as much as I have. Go check Hannah out and see what she can do for you. And until next time, guys, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other boss babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, boss babes.